Yeah, I had heard about Philippe Petit and his story because I saw the wonderful documentary Man on Wire. But what really intrigued me was that Robert Zemeckis, the filmmaker of this movie, The Walk, he wanted to tell the story in a new way that wasn't so much objective, wasn't like a journalistic report, but instead was subjective, was through the eyes of Philippe Petit, who was actually up there on the wire. Where you could actually experience what it's like to be up there, because there is no footage, there's no film footage of his actual performance, of his actual wire walking between the two towers. And the only way to really experience that is to recreate it through the magic of cinema. And Mr. Zemeckis is, quite qualified to do that. Well, when you're in a movie based on a true story, you have a real person that you can talk to. And Philippe himself was actually really, really helpful in making this movie. In fact, he was the one who insisted that he teach me to walk on the wire. And that's what he did. And not everyone who's good at doing something is also good at teaching it. But Philippe is an excellent, excellent teacher. And I think it's because he's just such an optimist. He really believed that I could do it, and that made me believe that I could do it. And once I believed that I could do it, then I could. One thing Philippe talked about was how walking on the wire is just as much mental as it is physical, and that when you're up there on the wire, if you let your mind wander, if you start thinking, "Whoa, I'm up here really high, and I could fall, and maybe I'm not good enough for this," or any of those thoughts, then you will fall. And I experienced that while we were practicing. I definitely experienced what it was like to sort of lose my concentration and lose my balance. But he said, if you can just clear your mind of those things and just focus your eyes on the end of the wire and don't think about anything else, then you can keep your balance. And he was right. Well, the thing about Philippe is he's an optimist. I think that's his primary quality. He always thinks positively. You'd have to have this crazy idea to hang a high wire between the two towers of the World Trade Center and walk across that wire. You'd have to be such an optimist to really think that you could do it. And I love that. I think in our culture, oftentimes we're surrounded by voices saying like, "Oh, you can't do that. You should not even really try because you'll probably only fail." And those voices can really get in your head and be discouraging. But it's so nice to have a voice in your head saying like, "Yes, you can do it. And who cares if it seems hard? And who cares if you don't even know how to do it yet? Just keep going. You have to try." I really admire that. Well, when I finally learned to really do it and really keep my balance on my own, you get into that zone and you get this rush of positive feeling running through your body. It does hurt. I mean, your whole body has to be tight. You have to keep all of your muscles tense, especially your feet. But none of that pain really matters because you're just so thrilled that you're doing it. Sure, there is a real overlap, I think, between walking on the wire and acting, and it's a question of focus. Acting is a lot about focus. That while you're shooting a scene, if you start thinking about the camera or the lights or the crew or the critics at the box office or any of those things, you won't give a good performance. You have to be able to just clear your mind of all that stuff. And it's the same with walking on a wire. Well, the thing that struck me the most about Robert Zemeckis, Bob, he goes by Bob, is his humility. He's such a great filmmaker, so talented, so smart, has made so many great movies over the years, and yet he's still open to asking questions, having conversations, receiving input from, whether me, the actor, or the cinematographer, or just, the guy operating the crane that the camera's on. He's open to hearing everybody's perspective, and I think that's a big part of what makes him such a strong filmmaker. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I've always loved the French language and French culture and French movies especially. And I've been studying it since I was a teenager. And this movie was an opportunity for me to take all the things I've learned and really kind of polish it and try to perfect it and spend that time. And it was a lot of fun for me. Yeah. Sure, well, Miyazaki is one of my favorite directors of any kind, not just Japanese. I mean, those movies are just so unique and mind-expanding, and I thought The Wind Rises in particular was gorgeous. I've never seen another movie like that. Not to mention, Spirited Away or Totoro. What else? I mean, of course, I love Kurosawa movies. I haven't seen all of them for sure, but I remember seeing Ran, and Ran is a telling of an Old English play, King Lear, and there's very few movies, I think, that successfully adapt Shakespeare, and so many movies try to do it, but only a handful, I think, really succeed. And Ran, I thought, is one of the very, very best. No, I wouldn't risk my life. No, I wouldn't. I feel very lucky that I've never had to risk my life. And of course, there's lots of people in the world who are forced to do that. And I feel just very fortunate that I'm not in that position. To me, life is too precious. It's a gift. And me personally, I wouldn't risk it. I think it's incredible that Philippe Petit did that. But I wouldn't do it. Sure, I love taking risks. I just wouldn't risk my life. But even actually doing this movie is in a way quite risky because in the Hollywood movie business, doing something different is not always considered to be the smart thing to do. It's because it's risky. And most big visually spectacular movies that come out of Hollywood, all of the spectacle comes from guns and car chases and explosions and fighting, and not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. There's some movies that I love that have those things, but to make a movie that's huge visual spectacle and really thrilling and heart-pounding stunts and action, but that isn't about guns and cars and explosions, is that's a risk to take. And I was happy to do it, and I was really honored that